This is a quick tutorial on scanning gaming minis and mini sprues with the Matterform 3 3D scanner. Now, when you're scanning things at this tiny size, and this is so small, like I can't even really get my camera, my webcam to really focus on it. You know, the details are tiny. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick my phone in front of it here and just zoom in. You know, these details are very small. Let's get that to focus. There we go. You know, if I put a ruler in front of that, where's my ruler? Here's my ruler. Just to get a sense of like what we're talking about here. You know, we're talking, you know, that's millimeters. So we're talking extremely tiny details here. So 3 can do a pretty good job capturing stuff that small, but there's a few kind of tricks that when you're working at this level of detail, this tiny of details, there's a few tricks that are gonna help make sure that you get, you know, the best result possible. So the first thing I want to talk about is the physical setup of the scanner. So there's nothing really unusual about it. You can see here the scanner and the turntable. There is roughly about 8 inches distance between the scanner and the center of the turntable. I've mounted my little gaming sprue here, the model sprue, on a paper clip. I find these are really helpful because they can sit nice and steadily on the turntable. So, you know, in terms of the setup, the angle's fairly narrow. It's maybe about 25-30 degrees from flat for the scanner, and yeah, that's about it. There's not really an elaborate setup here. I don't have any special lighting. I'm just, you know, I have the overhead lights in this room. It's pretty straightforward. So that's the physical setup. You know, you've got the piece mounted, you have the scanner, you have the turntable. It's fairly close together, and so the way you know that you're close enough but not too close is actually in the software. So I'm just going to flip over to the software here, and we'll take a look at that. So I'm just going to add a scan. Now, if you've never done a scan with Matterform 3, I would suggest going to our other tutorial, which walks you through doing an entire scan from start to finish. This tutorial is specifically focused on kind of the uniqueness of doing really small things like gaming minis. And so I'm not going to go into a lot of details on all of these settings in general, but more specifically, I'm going to talk about them just for doing gaming minis. So if you're completely new to this, I would suggest watching the other tutorial first. So, right, add scan. So I'm just going to turn up the exposure here a little bit so I can see what I'm working with. So I'll turn that around. So right now I have, you know, I have the 2 cameras, you can left and right. You can see there's, you know, the object, the sprue is pretty close to the camera on both sides without, you know, it's not sticking out. There's not like this, or, you know, it's not pretty far away. You know, you want to get as close as you can with something of this small so that the cameras can actually see and focus on the really tiny details that it has. So I'm just going to pull this forward. So about right there, anywhere there, you can see that with I pointed the mouse, like the piece is kind of centered in the screen. It's on the right-hand side of the left screen and the left-hand side of the right screen, rather than being further into the center. And so basically, this is as close as you can get without it starting to get cut off. And so if I push it forward even more, you know, physically you're getting closer to the scanner, but it's cutting it off in the software, so that's obviously not going to work. So you need to be able to see the entire thing. So I'll just move the scanner back, move the turntable back, kind of move it around. And there we go. So there we go. So now, you know, it's going to turn and it's going to capture the whole thing as close as possible without getting cut off. And that's pretty much it. So in terms of the positioning, we have the scanner positioned I'll just flip back to take a look at the scanner itself. There we go. So you can see, you know, it's still in more or less the same position as I had it earlier. That's going to work fine. Let me transition back to the software. So now, next thing I want to talk about is the actual object itself. Now, this is made out of plastic. I'm going to flip back to the camera, actually. One sec. This is not a slick presentation tonight. It's just a simple, get to the point kind of tutorial so that you can see what I'm talking about. So, you know, it's made out of plastic, and I don't know if you can see on the camera, but basically this kind of plastic has a bit of a shine to it. And if you're scanning something larger, like I had my other tutorial, I was scanning this giraffe, and this is also plastic and it has a bit of a shine to it. But when you're dealing with something that's larger like that, there aren't really any tiny fine details on the object that you're going to lose because of the shine. I mean, technically you will lose a little bit of it. The shine will cause a bit of surface noise regardless of the size of the object, but it becomes particularly noticeable when you're dealing with really small stuff like this. And so what you want to do is you want to use scan spray. You don't absolutely have to use scan spray to get a decent result, but if you want the absolute best result possible when you're dealing with something that has these tiny, tiny details, you're going to get a better result if you use scan spray than if you don't. So I'm going to actually use the scan spray for this, and I'm just going to cut here and go scan spray it and come back. Okay, I took this to the basement and I scan sprayed it, and so this is what it looks like now. And you might not be able to see much of a difference there, but it is sprayed. It will be far less reflective of the projector light now, and that means you will get a better surface finish on your scan. So I'm going to put it back on the turntable right in the center there. Okay, so now I'm going to flip to the software and talk about the next part, which is the various settings that we have here and what you should choose. So first of all, let's talk about the camera. So I had put up the exposure so I could actually see where this was on the turntable and make sure it was nice and centered. But now that I can see that, I actually don't need much exposure here. So I'm not scanning for color. I just want geometry. And I've turned the projector brightness down as well. Basically, anything that's going to cause a lot of brightness on this, that's going to make it potentially reflective or kind of shiny or bring out that shininess, is going to degrade your scan quality. So you can make your gain 0, make your exposure the lowest, so 90, and bring your projected brightness down to like 20, whatever. And that'll work just fine. In fact, it will work better than if you have a brighter exposure. So do that. In terms of capture, because we're looking at very fine detail here, we want to go with a high scan density. We want to pack as many pixels into that image as we can so that we're going to pick out as many pixels over those fine details and bring them out. In addition, I'm going to move my noise reduction to the very top. I want to make sure that any kind of pixel noise that might be there is deleted. Because when you're dealing with details this small, pixel noise starts to come into play and become geometry. So you want to make sure you're maximizing your noise reduction. And again, these are settings for doing something really small like these miniatures. You use different settings for larger objects, but that's a different tutorial. And then finally, for the turntable, I am going to go with 11 scans. That is going to be more than sufficient. I think you can do up to 14. Honestly, I think for this, anywhere between 9, 10, or 11 is going to be fine. Will give you plenty of coverage over this. And that's about it. That's really it. So, okay, I've moved my turntable around and I have changed these settings. I'm just going to make sure I'm focused where I want to be. And it's saying, if I focus, of course, I'm changing my calibration, and that's okay. So I'm going to do that because I want to talk about calibration as well. So I want to make sure that this is as focused as possible. I'm just going to increase the exposure here just to see what I'm seeing there. I'm going to make that just as perfect as I can. good. You know what? I'm actually going to move this just a little bit further away from the camera. There is a maximum or sort of minimum distance that the cameras can focus at, which is about 220 millimeters. So if you get closer than that, you're actually losing fidelity because it isn't focused. So having a bit of a back off of that is probably pretty good. So there we go. All right, move my exposure back down. Okay, and so then we'll calibrate turntable. So just one last time, I'm going to go through all the settings. I've scan sprayed the object, got low exposure gain and projector brightness. These are all low values. The capture, I've got high density and maximum noise reduction, not capturing texture. It's not necessary here. And for the turntable, I'm using 11 scans for a 360-degree sweep. And just coming back to the camera, sorry, the view of the scanner itself, you know, I've got this here in the center. You can see it's been scan sprayed. All is ready to go. All right, so let's do our calibration. So I will click Calibrate Turntable. Okay, that's fine, that's fine. And so now I am going to throw on the calibration plate. Now I want to do it, as you can see, I've got it set up like this on an angle. This is going to be much easier for the scanner to see the whole thing. If I put it like this, it still sees it, but it sees less of it. So the way to do it is to use the angle slot, like so, and then you can just place it there, and it's getting, you know, plenty of it to do the calibration. So we'll calibrate there. Now it's really important when you're calibrating and when you're scanning at this kind of tiny size. I mean, it's always important not to wiggle your desk, wiggle the scanner. You know, that's usually going to mess up your scan, but it will be particularly bad when you're dealing with something that is as small as a gaming mini. Okay, so that is our calibration complete. I'll throw this back on and press continue, and we will start. So it takes a bit of time, not too much, but a little bit. Each individual scan is a little bit more thorough than it would normally be because I've maximized the noise reduction, and also because it's the highest density, so that the processing takes as long as it can take to do this, but you know, it's not that long. Okay, that's the scanning done. I'm just going to flip over to the software. And it's going to finish the processing. Okay, so let's have a look at what we have now. So this is our result. Looks pretty good. Now this is, of course, just the point cloud. It's not, it's not meshed or anything yet, and it's obviously we're missing some spots now. I have actually done an earlier scan of the same piece, but from the other direction. So kind of like this is the bottom, this scan and the last scan, which I have here, turntable group 10 was the other direction. So I have that prepared, and I will use this one to combine with the earlier one, and we'll see what we got. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to clean up the mounting base here. I'll just use my tools to do that, the cleaning tools. Okay. Okay, cool. So now I have the two scans, scan 10 and scan 11. So I just did scan 11 just now. And so we're going to put these two together. And we'll do that with point picking. So I'm going to click point pick, click the first one, click the second one. And then I've got the two of them here. I'm going to turn off these axes markers. And then I'm going to arrange them so that they are the same. We're looking at the same sides for both. Okay. So what I like to do is put the markers on both sides of the object. And this is, again, particularly important when you're dealing with something that is this small. I think it's good to kind of get coverage all the way around. So I am going to choose areas that are the same. So the first place I'm going to choose is here, just underneath this hole. And I'm going to choose the same spot over here, right about there. Okay, and then the next pace I'm going to do right in the center of the cross there. Oops. So good. Okay, and now I'm going to flip to the other side, and we'll add some markers on this side. So I'm going to add a marker right on the corner there. Same there. And this one, I think I'll just stick, I think I'll put right there. Right on the, there we go. There we go. Okay, so we have our 4 markers placed. Now I could have just gone 1, 2, 3, and then stuck the 4th one somewhere else, but as I said, I like to make sure that I get both sides. And so, oops, I just moved my marker. Let me put number 2 back. There we go. Okay, cool. So now I'll click Align. Okay, there we go. So that is fully aligned, the 2 scans. So it looks pretty good, I think. You can see the markings here. This has come out pretty well, the kind of feathers effect on the top of the standard. Okay, cool. So that's the sprue. Now what we're going to do is go into merge. Visible is fine. And I am going to, you can mess around with this, and there isn't necessarily always a correct setting here. In fact, there isn't always a correct setting for the mesh quality. I'm going to go with very high, or sorry, with high, because I think that's going to give me the fidelity I want without creating a bunch of surface noise and stuff. So I'm going to give that a go. Okay, there we go. So that is our result. Let's put this around here. That looks pretty good. Got the grating and the tubing on the sides there. And the feathers on the banner top look pretty good. A little bit more smoothed out on this side than on this side, but again, we are talking about a fraction of a millimeter here in terms of the size, so I am pretty satisfied with that. So yeah, there we go. I'm just going to add this to my project. I'm not going to bother with changing the simplifying the polygons, and I'm certainly not going to texture it because I don't have any color that I captured, but that is pretty much it. So you have your scan and your mesh, and there you go. And that's about it. That is how you do it. So, just to recap, you've got to make sure that you have your scanner and your turntable that are, reasonably close together, like you can see here, so that your object can sit. And I've got my object mounted to something so that it's going to sit and not move around when it scans. It's not going to wobble. I made sure when we were scanning that I didn't hit the table so that it didn't wobble. I have used scan spray, and again, it's not absolutely necessary to use scan spray, but when you're dealing with something this tiny, any extra reflection is going to start to do stuff like obscure the tiny little details that you have on something like this winged banner head. So scan spray, and then in the software you're looking at making sure that your object is nicely centered. It's as close you can, like you're seeing your object here on the center of the software on the sides of this camera towards, so that it's as close as it can get. And you're going to use a low exposure and low gain and low projector brightness because you don't need all that extra brightness. Your capture's high, noise reduction maximized, no texturing, and the turntable use like 10 or 11, maybe 12 scans. There's probably no more than that is necessary. And then when you calibrate, make sure that you have your calibration card on the angle and not straight standing on the 90-degree portion of the stand, but is sitting on the more angled version, the maybe 30-degree portion. Actually, that's about maybe 35 degrees. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at support@matterandform.net, and happy scanning.